I titled today's conversation Mind Map, I Shifted My Identity by Doing Nothing. Tat Tvam Asi. Lately, we've been talking about how you can do nothing to acknowledge the fact that you are all that you desire to be. You could do nothing to acknowledge the fact that you have everything that you desire. That is because you transcend the thoughts that suggest otherwise. The thoughts of limitation, the thoughts of lack, as they do not accurately define you. As we transcend, which we are actually at the point now, so thus we could say we have transcended ego identification, we acknowledge that pure essence of existence as true identity, from which the body appears to flow, the environments appear to flow, everything appears to flow to be in harmony. And thus all these things that the individual once desired, having sought and found the kingdom within by doing nothing, to acknowledge that they are in the kingdom now. All these things that they once desired are spontaneously added onto them, as stated in the Bible. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things are added unto you. Now the person may think they need to do something externally and internally in order to access the kingdom. And while the individual may think that those things are helpful, that may result in identification to those things. As in, the individual may now think, I need to do these things inwardly in order to access the kingdom. I need to do these things externally in order to access the kingdom. The fact is, they are already abiding in the kingdom now, as the pure essence of existence is true identity. Thus, you are where you desire to be now. You are already abiding in the kingdom now. And you don't need to do this or that to access the kingdom. You can do nothing to access the kingdom. And do nothing or doing nothing is not another concept. Doing nothing or do nothing is literally not identifying. Thus, the shift occurs when identification drops. You are reality, the pure essence of existence. Thus, you are realized. As we've been discussing, ultimately only God alone exists. So, as ultimately only God alone exists, how can there be an individual that needs to shift their identity that's illusory? What the Bible refers to as the old man, who thinks in terms of separation from the source, thinks in terms of separation from the source of infinite love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, constructs based on experiences, conditioning or programming, and places that programming in the subconscious mind in order to get, in order to have. Yet ultimately, beyond what can appear, can be witnessed as programming, or can appear or can be witnessed as mind, is that existence, consciousness, bliss. Tat Tvam Asi, you are that, perfect as you are now. And thus, knowing who you are, you no longer need to place limiting conditions or limiting beliefs or suggest that you need this or that in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, because you acknowledge that you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. The shift occurs when identification drops to these conditions, and love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment permeates the mind, permeates the body, and is acknowledged to permeate all in the moment. What is it practically experienced as? Well, one of the ways is people appear to echo what you have found within. They appear to point to the same truth that they have realized. So we have then harmonious friendships, harmonious relationships, harmonious business, because ultimately only God alone exists, playing all roles perfectly without the need for interference. The I needing conditions to be met, or tries to do this, or thinks it needs to do this or that in order to get, when actually I can do nothing to dissolve these illusory thoughts of needing to do this or that to experience the being I am as unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, infinite, not limited, beyond the limitations in mind. And that I am, untouched, the everlasting peace, the everlasting bliss, the everlasting love, everlasting fulfillment. And thus, then, the individual goes on to experience spontaneously all these things added onto them in flow. So, essentially, by do nothing, what is experienced is that stillness that reveals the real self behind I thoughts. The mental noise also disappears. As I always say, these thoughts that do not represent you appear to disappear. You no longer identify with them because you know they do not accurately represent reality. Because you know who you are. You are that pure essence of existence that transcends the limiting beliefs, that transcends the limiting thoughts, not identified as you are. And the thoughts of limitation no longer appear in mind. The emotions are no longer thought of as being restrictive. The emotions that arise are no longer avoided or neglected, as the perfect love embraces all. The perfect peace embraces all. So, the essence of existence is not a concept to understand. It's the truth that has been realized. You have realized the truth of who you are. And having realized the truth of who you are, the eternal truth, congratulations. You have shifted your identity. Now, why I teach do nothing to shift identity is because the individual may think that they need to do this external thing, this internal thing, whatever it may be, whatever they imagine they need to do, in order to be. And while we can say that can be helpful, as I found that in the earlier stages, to access that eternal peace, to access that eternal bliss that I am, it was helpful to have some pointers, like auto-suggestions, for example, which are pointers to being. Desires, for example, which are pointers to being. While thoughts and emotions and experiences and information and people and imaginal activity and physical activity can be helpful, if the individual forms an identity around particular techniques or thinks that they need to do this or that in order to be, they perpetuate that false identity that suggests that this needs to happen or that needs to happen in order to be. It's a subtle nuance point, yet I trust that you know exactly what it is that I speak of. By do nothing, you can access that eternal peace anywhere you are. In a challenging situation, for example, in entrepreneurship, I would access this eternal peace in moments where the individual may call it chaos. Yet, there is always peace in chaos. So every individual inevitably gets to the point where they know who they are and then remains as they are, unaffected, not moved by appearances, because they know that whatever the individual seeks for in appearances, whether it be external love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, they are already that. And not only are they already that, which they can imagine as a condition, that, let's say, if that condition appears, then love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, they are beyond that. They are the infinite love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So thus no condition in mind can limit them. No appearance can limit them. And all of this can be done by anyone in the moment by not doing. So when I say can be done by anyone, it's kind of illusory to suggest that, because you are already that. Yet, let's say if the individual thinks that they are not, or they imagine that they are not, or they seem to suggest based on appearances that they are not, don't identify. Abide as you are. Do nothing to not identify. Do nothing to abide as you are. I can assure you, in the earlier stages when I acknowledged that I can do nothing to be, I thought, how could this be? This doesn't make any sense. I thought I need to do this or that, externally and internally. I need to do this and that in order to be. And so I inquired, who am I trying to be by doing this internal or external thing? And do nothing is not an internal or external thing. It is abandonment instantaneously anytime any I thought arises to look outwardly for that which I am inwardly. So what are the benefits then? What are the byproducts, we can say, of the shift? Well, as we've been discussing, you remain in flow. The individual remains in flow. The body remains in flow. And as I've been discussing all throughout the years, I make flow a priority. I can simplify it further by saying do nothing to make flow a priority. In other words, you don't need to do this or that to make flow a priority. You could do those things if you'd like, if you find them to be helpful. I did those things inwardly in imagination, and I did those things outwardly, physically, to experience flow. Yet I found that I could do nothing to be in flow. How liberating is that? You could do nothing to be in flow. Because flow is the natural way of life. The flow, we could say, is not a concept to be grasped again, to understand conceptually, to form an identity around it. Just as I refer to do nothing is not intended to form another identity around. That suggests this needs to happen, that needs to happen in order to be. All of that not needed to be. Do nothing to be in flow. And that's what happens then is spontaneous living, spontaneous flow. What have I noticed? As in, what has Joseph noticed? Well, what I have noticed is I spontaneously travel. I release the book, for example. The book that I just released on Amazon. It's called The Direct Path to $1 Million. Turn what you already have into a fortune. Built on the foundation of, we can say, making flow a priority. And now we can say do nothing to make flow a priority. And also building 3 successful businesses along the way. And writing about it and sharing my experiences. So that book, when it was being put together, everything that was involved with that book, including the idea to write that book, spontaneously happened. It happened. That's the experience of no identification. No identification means I do not need this or that condition in order to have a wonderful experience, writing my book, putting it together, creating the cover, etc. I do not need this or that condition to be met. I have, over the years, released these conditions in mind and dissolve the programming in mind to the point where we can call the experience as no mind, pure being. Only God alone exists, and only God alone does everything in perfect harmony. So what happens then is spontaneous living in flow and harmony. Spontaneously, you get ideas, you move forward with it. Naturally. It's not like you force yourself to do it. Forcing yourself to do things is a result of identification. You are already all that you desire to be. So what spontaneously arises is the steps you take, whatever it may be. Ideas, hunches, plans, inspiration flash upon the mind's eye, and you arise under compulsion, in flow, not stress, not frustration. You do what you love to do. You know, Steve Jobs had said this in his commencement speech. Do what you love to do. Follow your heart and intuition. Everything else is secondary. The following your heart and intuition, everything else is secondary, happens naturally. It's not like you're trying to follow your heart and intuition. It happens spontaneously. No concern, no worries, in flow. There's also a deep inner peace not based on circumstances, not based on conditions, not based on appearances. Practically speaking, for example, in business, you send out a bunch of emails. Like, for example, we're going to be doing a series of meetups. If you're interested in the meetups, there's a link in the description. A number of people have registered. Members of Flow-Based Prosperity are going to be there. And everything happens spontaneously and naturally, and people show up as they show up. It's not like I'm worried about the attendance, how many people show up, etc. It happens. So in other words, we could say in business, if someone wants to do the deal with you, great. If they don't want to do the deal with you, great. It does not disturb the ever-existing peace that you are. It does not disturb, it does not shake the everlasting love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that you are. And this is, we can call, the realest of experiences, because you know reality. You know the pure essence of existence as reality, thus you are reality, true identity, beyond thoughts of limitation, beyond imagining conditions of limitation. You exist as peace, and you experience thus peace everywhere. And it can sometimes, let's say, be described as profound peace, profound love, profound happiness, profound fulfillment. In relationships, for example, the individual stops seeking for external love or what they think of as conditions to be met in order to experience love. Those conditions no longer exist in mind. They're illusory. So they meet people that are a harmonious match. And they don't look around to see what other people are doing before they allow themselves to have what they desire, before they allow themselves to be. Because what need is to look around to see what other people are doing and then determining based on that what you should do, as ultimately only God alone exists. So ultimately there is no other. And knowing that there is no other, there is no one to hate, not love, not to be in peace with, not to be fulfilled with, not experience happiness with, because that's illusory, as ultimately only God alone exists. Spontaneously, what arises are business relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, etc. So thus, there's also no more fear of future or regret of the past, just pure presence. Pure presence, because you acknowledge the pure essence of existence is you. You have shifted the identity. Now you know what I mean by it's illusory to say that, because it seems like a faint memory. Was there really an individual that did not know that they were love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment? Was there really an individual that seek outwardly for that which they are inwardly? That doesn't seem real. How could I have thought that? That kind of thinking belongs to what the Bible refers to as the old man. Old man, the old identity, was once constructed by memory and conditioning and relating to appearances, judging by appearances, and forming a personal identity that seem to suggest separation from being. There's only being. And that is true identity. Now, abiding as you are, true identity, all those things once desired are spontaneously added onto you. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things are added onto you. You can do nothing to access the kingdom. Again, seeking the kingdom may sound like doing all these outwardly things and inwardly things in order to get the kingdom. You do nothing to access the kingdom. You release all identification, and love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment permeate the mind, permeate the body. Congratulations, you have found the kingdom. That's what I mean by you can do nothing to access the kingdom. I may have once thought that I need to do this or that in order to experience that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So I was imagining this or that, and although I found it to be helpful, or I was physically doing this or that in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, and although I found it to be helpful, I had found that I found an identity on needing to do those things in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. But then when I discovered that I could do nothing to experience that love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, and actually, not pretending, not faking, actually experiencing it, permeate the mind, permeate the body, the logical conclusion we could say is that I am. I already am all that I desire to be. Thus, you are all that you desire to be. You have all that you desire. We exist now together in perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, whatsoever things we once desired. Thus, we did nothing, we can say, to find the kingdom. And although we thought we needed to do this or that to find the kingdom, internally or externally, we realized that we can do nothing to find the kingdom. Thus, we are in the kingdom now. Acknowledging, thy kingdom come on earth now as it is in heaven. Also, freedom from trying to control, manipulate, or seek approval. All these conditions that the old man may have placed upon consciousness in mind are no longer needed. They just fall away. They dissolve completely because the old man may have thought that in order to have love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, or whatsoever things he desire, they need to control, manipulate, or seek approval or validation or confirmation. None of that is needed. Why does reality need to be controlled? Why does reality need to be manipulated? Why does reality need approval or validation when reality is experienced, when reality, the pure essence of existence, is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment? We can say then the mind goes inward, or the mind dissolves, or the illusions of I dissolve, and all that remains is what was already there in the beginning, now, and ever shall be. In the Peshitta Aramaic Bible translation, it says, "And God said, the light shall be, and the light was." The light is pure consciousness, perfect as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. And you can access that pure consciousness as you are pure consciousness. We can say it that way. Or another way of saying it is you can be as you are without identification. You simply acknowledge that you transcend the thoughts, the emotions, the body, the mind, the appearances, the thoughts of the past, the thoughts of the future, all imaginal activity that does not define you. To know who you are, thou art that. Thou art that I am presence, which eternally remains untouched, thus not conditioned by appearances. See, I may condition this and I may condition that, yet I am that unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, beyond illusory thinking that belongs to the old man. And I am always untouched, everlasting, thus you are untouched, everlasting, eternal, always here, always present, now, as love, as happiness, as peace, as bliss, as fulfillment. And You don't need to take my word for it. Prove it. Acknowledge that you can do nothing to be you. Acknowledge that you can do nothing to shift your identity and experience in the moment eternal love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that is found in existence itself, which is everything that the individual was seeking outwardly for or trying to put conditions on consciousness in order to get. It is found as the kingdom, or we could say the pure essence of existence. And immediately peace is experienced, deep inner peace that is not based on conditions, deep inner love that is not based on conditions, deep inner happiness that is not based on condition, deep inner fulfillment that is not based on condition. So it's kind of interesting to say, how does one practically do nothing then? Doing nothing means cessation of effort to become anything. Cessation of effort to become anything. You are already that. That still I am presence is acknowledgement of having. It represents being eternally as you are, peace, love, happiness, fulfillment. And it's undeniable because, as I said, you don't need to take my word for it just because Joseph said it. You actually experience it. You actually experience it by abiding as that still I am presence. Stillness, silence, that perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that embraces all that I am. You know who you are in the moment. As you cease the effort of becoming anything, you realize there's no fixing, no self-improvement, no resistance required for you to be you. As mentioned, I have done these things, and at times I have found them to be helpful. I've done whatever inward and outward things in order to fix something, in order to improve myself. And sometimes they seem to be helpful. Yet when I know the self that is already perfect, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, and thus does not need fixing or improvement, the self shines forth, purifying the mind and flowing the body. And all these things that I thought I needed to do now happen spontaneously. I no longer need to do it. In other words, I don't need to build a business. The business is built. I don't need to write the book. The book is written. It happens naturally, effortlessly. Nothing to fix, nothing to improve. Yet, what happens, we could say, is it manifests as what we can call improvements. This is true even for skill cultivation. Without the individual shaming, condemning, or thinking that they lack, or they are limited, or comparing themselves to this person or that person, in the moment they do nothing to acknowledge that they are that which they desire to be. They have what they desire, and spontaneously what arises is the natural flow of skill cultivation. They cultivate the skill in flow. It spontaneously arises. Doing nothing means releasing, or you can say letting go, but letting go, again, is not something to do. It happens. You do nothing to let go of all identification. Body, mind, emotions, roles, to know who you are. And as you know who you are, all of these things appear to transform. Body, mind, emotions, roles. And we can say then you play the perfect role, as ultimately only God alone exists, playing all roles perfectly. So abiding in being, which is ever present and unchanging. You think you have changed. That is not you. That is the concept of you that has changed, yet you remain the same, perfect as you are now. Ever present, unchanging, and as you abide as you are, things may appear to change to be in harmony. Body may appear to be in flow, to be in harmony. As I mentioned, skill cultivation, the different aspects of the entrepreneurial journey. The optimization with respect to innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership happens in a flow-based way, we could say, because there's no resisting. For example, if the entrepreneur thinks that in order to be admired by people, they need to have a lot of money in the bank account, now they're orienting from that faulty premise in relation to their environment, in relation to their innovation, their sales, their marketing, their operations, their finance, their leadership. Yet if that condition is dissolved, what naturally and spontaneously arises is the result that is based on the pure intention. So thus they end up having a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. But the approval seeking and the validation seeking is not there, because the approval seeking and the validation seeking was the result of identification to that particular belief in mind that suggests that they are doing this in order to get. In other words, they're saying, once I have this money, then people can respect me. That condition, which although the individual may think of as being motivating or inspiring, is not required. As a matter of fact, the individual performs better, we could say, in flow, as they realize that they are already that which they desire to be. They already have all that they desire, and they do not identify with illusory thinking that suggests that they lack or need anything from this world. And interestingly, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. All these things happen by not needing, by not wanting, by not craving. And how does one release the needing, wanting, craving? Doing nothing. Drop it. Drop it. Again, it's not a concept. Immediate, not identify. What remains is you. By not identifying with conditions or thoughts of limitation, what remains eternally is you, perfect as you are now. And from clarity, you are clarity, you clearly know what to do. Ideas, hunches, inspirations flash upon the mind's eye. You spontaneously do this, you spontaneously do that. Everything appears to flow without resistance. So we abide in being, which is interesting because that could sound illusory, like who is abiding in being, when ultimately there's only being. That is articulated for the individual that thinks themselves to be separate from being at particular points. No shame, no condemnation. Abide as being as you are. Abide in being as you are, perfect as you are now, not because of this or that reason. As you abide as you are for no reason, being as you are for no reason, these conditions no longer appear in mind. They're dissolved. Mind purification happens. Thoughts of limitation not identified with. Conditions dissolve. And the corresponding appearances that were a result of identification to those particular thoughts and conditions, as those thoughts and conditions are no longer identified with, those thoughts of limitation, those conditions of limitations are no longer identified with, everything appears fruitful to you, interesting. I ended up buying a property close to the place that I go snowboarding. It spontaneously, naturally arose, and the deal flowed harmoniously. As a matter of fact, I did the deal through a member of Flow-Based Prosperity. Shout out to Zor. He's a real estate agent. And we worked together. We actually played together. It was totally fun. And we ended up getting this property. And it is right by the mountains. As you know, I'm a fan of snowboarding. It happened spontaneously and naturally. And what's fascinating about it, how cool. I actually stayed in this property back in 2021 in an Airbnb. So it was a property that was once Airbnb'd out. And I remember asking the owner if he would ever sell this place. And I didn't think anything of it. And then a number of years later, I ended up buying the property. It just flowed naturally because that which represents you, the being you are, the love, the happiness, the peace, the bliss, the fulfillment can never be taken away from you. It just manifests naturally, spontaneously for you. God does everything perfectly, as ultimately only God alone exists. So As the conditions, as the thoughts of limitation were no longer identified with by doing nothing, what spontaneously manifested are the fruits of creation. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things are added unto you. And I don't know any simpler way to apply what was said in the Bible, seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be added unto you, than to acknowledge that you are in the kingdom now. That's doing nothing by acknowledging that you are in the kingdom now. And it's not faking it or pretending to be in the kingdom, because you actually experience it real time. The eternal peace, the everlasting peace, the eternal love, the everlasting love, the eternal fulfillment, the everlasting fulfillment, the eternal bliss, the everlasting bliss permeates mind, permeates body, and you know certainly you are in the kingdom now. So let's say if the individual had a taste of reality, they had a taste of heaven, and they would like to get back to heaven. Or we could say, how does one stabilize as that I am presence without effort? Well, this is why lately I've been saying do nothing. Because when I said before, make flow a priority or make this a priority, it may sound like a bunch of effort. You need to do this and that in order to make flow a priority. What I was saying is I do what I love to do, inwardly and outwardly, and flow is the natural result of doing what you love to do, inwardly and outwardly. Now, what's interesting is I don't even need to do those things inwardly or outwardly. Flow happens for no reason by doing nothing. So I could say that if you find it challenging to do things inwardly to be in flow or outwardly to be in flow, do nothing to be in flow, to acknowledge that body flows naturally anyways. Only God alone exists. You acknowledge that you are in heaven now, and only God alone exists by doing nothing. And to prove the point, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment permeate the mind, permeate the body, and everything appears to flow. So we don't try to hold the shift. We just don't identify with illusory thoughts. We just don't identify with appearances, because we acknowledge that existence, consciousness, bliss. The pure essence of existence is true identity. What is greater than that? There's nothing greater than that infinite love, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You are now. Tatwam asi, you are that. So why do I need to identify with this or that condition or this or that appearance in order to experience who I am? I don't re-identify. That's it. I allow the thoughts, the emotions to arise and pass, arise and subside. We could say life is experienced as a meditation. The intention of meditation for many is, for many reasons, but one could be to know who they are, or also to focus the mind on a single point. Yet those results also happen by doing nothing. So then we actually bring the meditation into daily life by witnessing, allowing, and flow. Like in a meditation, if thoughts arise, you don't identify with them. You let them be. If it's a meditation on a focal point like breathing, for example, Vipassana, if you're interested in Vipassana meditation, I'll link in the description too of Vipassana meditation. If it's a Vipassana meditation, you focus on your breathing, in and out, in and out. If thoughts arise, they appear and disappear. They appear to disappear. The thoughts of limitation no longer identify with, appear, disappear. Emotions arise, subside, sensations in the body, let them be, let the world be. So then I also put this in the book. I put a section in my book, again, I'll link in the description to it, on abiding as that still I am presence. As for the entrepreneur, if ever the individual, because I am not reactive, the ego can become identified with this and that and reactive, and thus the individual thinks they are whatever that reactivity seems to suggest in mind, which is a belief. Dissolve it. No longer identify with it. Do nothing to let it be. Another way of saying it is let it be. No technique. And acknowledge as well, as mentioned, although techniques, strategies, doing this or doing that inwardly and outwardly can be helpful, No technique is required. Just being as you are. There's no technique required for you to be as you are. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, I know that I am that infinite peace, love, happiness, bliss, fulfillment, as I abide as the pure essence of existence I am. That is who I am. That is my true identity. That is beyond illusory constructs in mind of identity, personality. Thus, I need not do this or that in order to be. I can simply be as I am, perfect as I am now. Thus, everyone appears to be perfect as I am now, allowing spontaneously the fruits of creation, the fruits of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, to effortlessly and spontaneously be added onto me. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.